Welcome back to Old Guy REI. This morning on Meet the Investor, I have the opportunity to speak with one of the pillars in our ORAT community, and Marc Oshiro, the financial firefighter, is with me. And I have a list of questions that have been burning. So today we're going to get into it. I know, first, Mark, thank you for taking the time to do it. And I chased you around for a little while, but finally caught you. Uh, a few of the things that we're going to get into today, I just want to mention, first of all, that you are a firefighter, you're a real estate agent, you're a dad, and among other things, you have a brother. You take care of your folks. So I think a lot of folks are going to be interested to hear. I guess more the serious side. We all know you as the jokester in the group, and that is really special. But maybe start with that. Actually, where you live, and we know you have a started a portfolio over the last few years, and maybe where you invest.
Wait, who thinks I'm a jokester? That's what I want to clarify. Now, yeah, so thanks for having me on. This has been a while. We've been trying to work around each other's schedule, and I want to make it clear though, you did not catch me. There's no way you're gonna catch me. But yeah, I'm glad we got to do this. But yeah, so I'm in Honolulu, Hawaii, born and raised here, and been a firefighter or in the fire service for coming up 18 years now. And yeah, I mean, that was always my kind of dream, my passion. And things happened in life, 2019, 2020, the world changed a little bit, and people started looking at things a little bit different, and that's kind of what put me down the real estate path, and got me to meet amazing people like you and Mikey and Cody and different people in the community, Michael Zuber. But yeah, so I'm in Honolulu, Hawaii, and I invest about 6,000 miles away in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I have never been yet.
Yeah, we catch a little flack about that too. Some of our mentors, who people who I consider mentors, and I'm sure you do too, with Dion and the lumberjack, and they just telling us you got to go see what you're buying, but we haven't seen any of our properties either. And the question's been raised in the group. We're in the ORAT community, we're in the school community with Michael Zuber, and a lot of people, a huge majority of people that invest out of state haven't gone to see their properties. And I think today it's maybe a little bit easier because you do have real estate agents, you have your inspections, you have people that are going to be able to actually see you have a building there. So that's been comforting. But why did you think real estate was a way, or actually, maybe I should rephrase that. What did you think real estate would do for you?
I guess the biggest thing for me is it was kind of changing that mindset first. So I wouldn't say that it was real estate, investing remotely was that first choice in a sense. Initially, my pension was my first choice. That kind of handcuff of retiring at a pretty fairly young age or putting in your vested time, getting this pension, getting benefits. And so I think that was always my original plan, getting in the fire service. It's a great job, but also the benefits, the retirement plan. So that was the first vision. And then, yeah, I was able to fortunately get like a condo and then a single family home in Hawaii. So originally, I thought I was set. A lot of people, they do realize Hawaii is a very expensive market. So a lot of times, and my parents did it, and in that generation, you bought a home and you pretty much just sat on it for 30, 40 years and, you're an instant millionaire, right? So that was kind of the plan, right? You get a fortunate, try to get a condo, get a home, get some sort of real estate property where you can live in, you're not paying rent, and you just figure by the time you retire, now you're a millionaire. And that was kind of the original plan. And like I said, things changed and it got me searching and realizing how risky I guess I was being and putting money in retirement accounts and things like that. It just didn't seem like it made that much sense if being able to have some freedom when you retire or having more security. So that had me looking into different asset classes and whatnot. And then that whole, I mean, maybe if we look back on it now, maybe it was kind of overblown or, but people were talking about passive income and things like that. And that's kind of what got me interested even more so in real estate. And one of my friends was investing remotely in Pittsburgh. And so that's why he was always talking to me about it, and it got me interested. And that's kind of what pushed me down the path into investing remotely, though.
A lot of us, well, now, like you mentioned, reflecting back on the years, because Cynthia and I started buying again in 2021. So, we're not super deep into it, but we have some time behind us, and it hasn't been passive at all yet. And I think even when everything's stabilized and optimized, it's not really truly passive. Like maybe having money in a lot of money in a savings account or a brokerage account or something like that, maybe. But when you went to Pittsburgh, you dove in head first, and I wonder if you were able to pick up um, quite a few properties in the first year or two. And I wonder if do you think that set you back a little bit instead of
Uh, yeah. I mean, I think if a lot of people in the community kind of just know maybe my personality a little bit, so that just was my approach, and I kind of just feel like I just figure things out, and I think that's the whole first responder mentality. Also, you kind of just go head first. You kind of assess the situation a little bit, but you do the best you can, and you figure it out. So that's kind of what I did. I definitely, if I would look back on it, I would be more strategic about a lot of things, and it's one of those where I'm glad I did it. But like you're saying, it's not always passive and it's not always easy in the beginning. However, I always tell people I think what I did slow me down in a sense where I think if I look back and I was more strategic, I'd be a lot further along. But at the same time, I think that's just part of the journey. And my mistakes is kind of where my whole maybe social media and YouTube channel and what it's more focused on is kind of helping people realize that it's not always going to be easy and you're going to make mistakes, but don't make the mistakes that I've done and just kind of improve on what I've done. And we're just going to all grow together. But I want to save you the time of not doing the mistakes that I did. So I look at it as, yeah, it has slowed me down, but it also has kind of been a um changed my approach, I guess. It's actually been good because I think if things were a little bit easier or if things were more strategic and I did scale a lot more successfully, I guess you'd say, then I probably would have a bigger portfolio than I'd want at the end of the day. So I think in some ways, making these mistakes and actually slowing me down has made me realize that that is more what I'm trying to accomplish. I don't want this huge portfolio. Like maybe initially when a lot of people get started, they see it and they're like, oh, if I get 100 properties or 200 properties, then I'm just set. And I think that has really changed my focus, and I think that's kind of where, like we said, a lot of us, Dion's mindset kind of relates to a lot of us. Coach Carson, that small and mighty investor, but that mindset of where you don't need a huge portfolio to kind of live the life that you want to do, right? So it's been beneficial to make these mistakes, and actually, like I said, it kind of slowed me down in a good way, though.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of great points there. I think one of the big ones that you just mentioned is we've talked to other investors recently where maybe someone has purchased a property and everything went perfect, which is rare. But when that happens, they get excited and think every deal is going to be like just like that one, and it could lead into some troubles down the line. And that's what I meant about slowing you down by doing it all, jumping all in at once. Because even though we didn't do it super fast, I think I did it a little too fast. And I've shared that because if I had waited on the last one or two that we bought, it would have made things a lot easier because we had a lot of expenses last year. and it would have been easier to weather that if I hadn't spent the money on the last two. So um, I think it's more beneficial for people if their first property isn't a home run per se, and like you said, there's been a lot of learning lessons. And I think our channels kind of came about for the same reason. We wanted to do the same thing. I made every mistake the first time we tried to invest. And I was speaking with someone yesterday that I thought the second time around would be like, I was expecting it to be perfect, but it's not. There was still lots of lessons and a few mistakes. So we're just trying to share those too with people and help them get a little further without going through those experiences if we can. Um, so right now, how big a portfolio do you have?
So I have 12 single family homes in Pittsburgh. I do have so this is kind of, I don't know if I ever, I mean, it's part of my portfolio, but I don't really consider it part of the journey in a sense. So I do have a small commercial space in Hawaii with my family as a partnership. Of course, I'm the majority of the ownership, but that's always generating. So I think that's also, we can always touch on that too, but that's always like my ace in the hole also. So I think maybe that's also why I'm a little bit riskier maybe than other people should be because I always feel I have that in my back pocket. So we have that, I have that, and then I've kind of, as you know, we're kind of doing, I guess, maybe a reverse house hacking terminology we're trying to come up with, or boomer hacking or whatnot. But basically, it's now my primary residence has become a rental for me to help care for my aging parents. I mean, they're still getting around, but they're definitely slowing down and need more help. So, things worked out where I was fortunate enough to be able to move back home and kind of take care of them and help them out, but at the same time, turn my primary residence into a rental now.
Mhm. Um, do you think, are you expecting or hoping to pick up more properties, or do you think the ones you have will be good for what your plans are for the future?
No, I think I'm gonna pick up more properties, but definitely I don't feel the rush to. So it's like even, currently like I probably sent out to one of the people, we work with in Pittsburgh, like, hey, just take a look at these properties. They've been sitting, there's no real rush. If someone else picks it up, then it is what it is. But I'm in no rush to get these things. But I am looking, if the deal makes sense. We talk about disrespectful offers and things like that. So I'm always looking. But it's not as if I feel like I need it. And I always tell people I'm in a very fortunate situation. Like I said, I have the rental portfolio. I have this commercial property. Like I said, turning my primary into a rental is a huge swing in amount of income per month. And like I said, I have a pension at some point, depending on how many I'm vested. So as far as my pension goes, it just kind of depends on how many more years I want to work and what I collect at a certain age. And I just looked the other day. I actually went on the Social Security website and just checked and my credits and whatnot. And so even that, I mean, it's not a lot, but at 62, I could get like $1,000 a month or something is would be
Mhm.
my payment. So I have like I said, I'm in a great position. I have medical to a certain point, depending on how much. So I'm always looking. I am, but I think my strategy definitely has changed, and I'm even considering just buying right now with what rates are at and where the market and volatility and everything. I'm actually looking at maybe just buying cash for some properties, like smaller properties that just cash flow right now. I probably, if I do, it would probably be closer to that um, 80 to 100K price range to where when the rates do come down, then I'll probably refi out and pull out a lot of the equity. But for now, just take a lot of risk off the table, maybe buy some stuff cash, let it cash flow for a while. And then when the market shifts, try to get that equity out. But the price point has to be right because like I think you probably noticed too, it's a difficult time as a rental property, it's hard to get the equity out of it if the price point is too low.
Mhm.
And so that's why the price point have to be right in that sweet spot where I'm not putting a lot of cash into it, but at the same time, I can refinance out at some point.
Yeah, you're right. That has been a challenge for us because in the St. Louis market that we're in, we purchased three or four properties, and they range from 70,000 to 100,000 was the most recent and the most expensive. But by the time you get that, the down payment and the loan amount is like 50K or so. There aren't too many lenders that do that, but through the group, and I was going to mention, you have done a really great job of pulling all these different people together, through your channel and the community. And we found probably 5 to 6 lenders that do go down that low. Um, and one thing that always pops into my head, Zuber always mentions you can go broke buying cheap. I think there's a difference between, say, a less expensive property. I wouldn't consider that we bought cheap, but we did definitely buy on the lower side because that's what we could afford and that's how we got in. So, um, just going back to that, we've been introduced to a lot of people that have helped us in our journey because those are things you don't know, right? I always thought you could get a loan on any property that you bought, but a lot of the lenders that we started with have $100,000 minimums, and now that's been changing. It's been going up a bit. They're requiring more down, and the lending scene changes day to day. And luckily, through the group, we're able to stay on top of it. And Dion and Zuber talk about if you have the opportunity to say to get refinanced or to get a loan or to get a HELOC, you should do it while you can because it's easy to get the money when you don't need it. But when you do need it, you might not be able to. So we're actually in the process of getting a HELOC on our primary right now while we can. And Cynthia is not willing to put more risk on our primary residence, but we'll just use it for a backup just in case anything comes up and we need some emergency money. So we'll use it as a tool. And that's something we didn't know, in the beginning. We've learned so much through the group, and um, it's helped us just with our finances in general, not just with real estate, but it's been a great journey so far. You you're also a real estate agent. How long have you been an agent?
Shoot, 2.5 years, 3 years. Yeah. But I am a more of a acquisition agent. So I have, well, initially I was doing it more for property management. And there is some states where you have to have your license to do property management. And then the other thing is for some states, you have to be under a certain brokerage or you have to be under a brokerage to do property management. And then not every brokerage does do property management. So there's a lot of nuances in it. So that is kind of why I got my license was to kind of do this property management to where same thing. It's not something where I wanted to have a full-blown company per se or business. It was more just to get a small portfolio of properties to manage. The same thing, kind of generate some extra income monthly. So that was the vision, and I still do property management, but I have switched to another brokerage. So I am with EXP now, and a lot of people hear about EXP as kind of the original of that model, but it's a great brokerage because you have different ways, I guess, or if you look at it, just like rental properties, different ways to generate income. And one of it is that their fees are lower. So people are still doing the same thing. They're still selling homes, but if they're not paying as much to a brokerage or paying monthly fees, their income increases that way. If the splits are better, which EXP have, charges less basically, or you have a lower amount you have to meet requirement, and then you get more income from yourself. So that's one way people benefit from joining EXP. I'm looking at it more from like an agent acquisition side, where I acquire agents under my kind of I guess people call it a pyramid in a sense,
Hmm.
but acquire agents that are still going to sell homes. but I can assist them, like with my YouTube channel or promoting them or promoting their social media also. But that's another way, and you kind of look at it like rental properties. Every agent that you can acquire is like a rental property in your portfolio, and now you just leverage that property or that agent to who they can acquire. And it's kind of like building a rental portfolio without dealing with all the maintenance and whatnot. So it's just for me, it's because I have a YouTube channel, because I'm talking to a lot of different people, I'm trying to get a lot of different agents to come on my channel. And then, hey, if they want to find a different brokerage that they have to pay less fees to, but yet they're still doing the same work as far as selling homes, then EXP might be a great option for them.
Yeah, so I think you started getting interested in that. You've had Kobe on your channel quite often, and he is also an EXP agent.
Yeah, so Kobe Zinn is who I fall under, and then he falls under different bigger broker agents. But Kobe also is more of an agent acquisition type of agent. So he's more about bringing agents under his tiers. And then, like I said, there's some agents that want to sell homes, and that's their vision. And if you're going to do it, you might as well pay the least amount of fees as possible. So for some people, though, maybe EXP is not the greatest place to start because some people feel you don't get that training from a one-on-one experience because a lot of it is cloud-based. So as we know, you look at like Uber, things like that. Even like Netflix, everything is streaming, so everything has become a cloud-based system, and that's kind of what EXP started. They got rid of the brick and mortar type of facility, so these brokerages don't have these high fees or lease agreements to pay for this brick and mortar place. And now that's how the agents are making more money because they're not paying for all these fees or all these brick and mortar locations. So yeah, I mean, so especially if you do want to sell homes, I mean, I'd want to pay the least amount of fees to my brokerage as possible and keep as much in my pocket. So that's another attraction for EXP, but they also have a lot of other things, like I said, the agent acquisition, referral programs, things like that. So there's a lot of different ways to generate money through EXP.
That's good. Yeah, another stream of income that's definitely helpful. Um, One thing that I've enjoyed on your channel, you bring a lot of different kind of groups together. One, obviously, was a group of firefighters that I saw recently on your channel, and you guys have a great rapport, I guess. But I was one of the nice things that I found on that call was how many I didn't realize how many I would say investing firefighters there are out there, and how just like I said about us earlier, just trying to help people. Um, it seems like, and you mentioned maybe with some of the younger firefighters, there's not so much a resistance to you don't want to talk them into real estate if that's not their thing, but just to share it with them. And a lot of them are thinking maybe like you were in the beginning that you're just going to work until you get your pension and life was going to be great. But you also mentioned how things have changed over the last few years, and that relying on one source of income might not be the best move. But how many I know that day you had a couple of firefighters with you. How many other groups are there that you know of where they're actual firefighters, or have you run across any groups like that in law enforcement? I know you do know a few police officers as well.
Well, the police guys will say the firefighters are doing it because we have a lot of time to do it and we just sit around. So they're gonna say that we have a lot of time to look at real estate and look on Zillow and look at properties because we don't do a lot of work. But I think that's the thing. First responders for a lot of people, and like you talked about it's the mindset is changing a little bit. A lot of guys got into it, or a lot of people, I should say, got into it because they do love the profession. They love helping the community. It's a great job, but at the end of the day, too, it's still a job. It, you know, and I'm noticing it a lot more. It's something that man, I didn't think trying to do it for 25, 30 years was going to be this physically difficult in a sense. You don't think about it when you first get in or when you're a lot younger. And then as your career starts going on, you start looking at it like, man, I don't, getting rolling out of bed for when the bop goes off isn't as easy as it used to. So you start looking at things differently. And like I think Millennial Mike, talks about it, like, when you get shot at for the first time or whatnot, it really changes your perspective on things. And you still love the job, but at the end of the day, it's that you still, you want to have a career after you retire. Or so it's kind of, I think I look at it now is we always try to tell younger people coming in that if you want if you end up doing your full service time, let's say you do your 25 years, then great. That's amazing, right? And if you love doing it every day, then even better. But give yourself the option to get out early if you want to, if you need to. Life changes, goals change, and even situation. I think, as you probably noticed too now, a lot of people are trying to be a lot more mobile. What worked for a lot of people, like my parents and stuff, a lot of people don't want to stay in the same place, 40, 50 years anymore. They want to be traveling, they want to be mobile. And I think even just like your job, so it is a great job. You do get a lot of great benefits, but a lot of times, you know, staying in one place for 25 years or 30 years, for a lot of people now is not really that American dream, maybe, right? They want to have that option. And I think that's at the end of the day, it's just give yourself that option to, if you did need to move or want to relocate, and you've put yourself in a financial position to where you don't have to worry about, I put 10 years into this career, I'm halfway there. I need to finish another 10, 15 years. And that's kind of what happened to me in the beginning. I think I've talked about it a few times, but we're not together anymore. But my son's mom, she's from North Carolina, and she always wanted to move back. So when my son was young, or about to be born, that was always on the table. And I think I had maybe might have 5 years in the department at the time, and it was kind of like, man, I have 5 years in now. I get vested at 10. I don't want to leave now. Should I at least get to 10? But if I was doing this real estate thing a lot sooner, or even other, start a business or have these other streams of income, then it becomes easier to make those decisions, to where if you do have to pick up and move or want to relocate, or even your spouse, maybe they get a better job opportunity somewhere else, it makes it easier for you to leave where you're at.
A few of us have talked about, well, let me go back. In this ORAC community, you and I spoke a little while ago about how crazy people are about real estate. And I know you've mentioned that maybe you're not passionate about real estate, but it is a means to an end. And, you know, I think I have well, it's a personal issue. Sometimes I hear things and I react too quickly. And so, when we think about that, I'm like, how could you be an investor and not be crazy about real estate? But um, after listening to your point of view, I came around to understand, and it's just that, right? For you, it's another stream of income. It's maybe a backup plan, like you said, just in case something changes in your life, and you'll have more options. That's one thing that even Cynthia and I, being in our second go round and building a small portfolio, have realized we have options today. Maybe they're not super, super great options, but they're options that we wouldn't have had if we hadn't gotten started. So I guess I understand now what you mean about, not being nuts about real estate, but you still do a great job of helping all these other people that are crazy about it, connecting all of us, and all the shows you do. And that was another thing. You do quite a few lives, and a couple times a week at least, from what I've seen. And I always try to jump in whenever I'm available. But you also have been experimenting with different platforms. I think Restream, I don't even know the names. Restream, I think you started on Zoom, right? I'm still on Zoom, but you found better ways to get out there, having multiple guests, and keep a great eye on the chat. And you're always talking back and forth with us who are in the chat, and I don't know how you do it all.
Well, so yeah, so going back to maybe the initial part of the question, you know, I do not love real estate like you nut jobs that can talk about it for 4 hours. I mean, every day you guys are on calls and just talking about it, and I just come in and distract you guys, and then you guys go right back to talking about real estate. So, I mean, I enjoy it. I just feel a lot of times it's repetitive, you know. I mean, I think a lot of times maybe it's because there's a new person that comes into that call. So you guys, it's still talking about real estate, but it's like a question that was talked about 2 weeks ago, but because there's a new person that comes in there. So a lot of times I feel it's very repetitive, and I like more the banter and just talking about it. But sometimes something will pique my interest. I hear something and I'll pay a little bit more attention. But I look at it also from like maybe I remember, like baseball growing up. You look at it, everyone has like a different swing, for the most part. Everyone is trying to figure out their timing, what's comfortable for them, whatnot. But when you look at like hitting, for example, at the end of the day, you can start your hands in a certain position, you can have a big leg kick or different stance, but before you hit that ball, your hands are going to end up almost in the same position, like a load position to where you're going to hit and start, your swing. So you can start with your hands anywhere. You can start it crazy, but at the end of the day, when you get right ready to hit, it's going to end up in this load position, and you have to have balance. So I look at it like that, where real estate, there's all these different strategies, there's all these different things people like to talk about, but the bottom line is there's just like basic kind of fundamentals that you're gonna need. And from there, it's just how crazy you want your stance to be, I guess, or how much you want to tinker with it and whatnot. But to me, it's this kind of learning the basics, having that foundation. And then from there, like I said, I enjoy the other side of it. And like you talked about it, it's more connecting with you folks. And like you said, like the chat, the comments. That's why I try to bring on people like yourself. Harrison's going to be on later today. But like you said, those firefighters, the first responder, financial freedom guys. But I try to bring people on that they can hold the conversation, or they're the ones that can answer the questions. I just want to be there to more read the chat, help bring in people's questions. So if you notice, I try not to speak too much. I try to let everyone else speak unless there's a big pause in there or something. I try to pick things up. But so that's why I always try to get people on, and even I try, and you guys may not think I do, but I try to get people on that maybe have a good relationship with each other, where they can feed off of each other and keep the conversation going. So a lot of times I'm not gonna bring probably um, two individuals that I know are just, they're not going to have much to say to each other in a sense. So I do try to kind of figure out who can work well together. So that's how when I'm asking people to come on my lives, I may get like you or Harrison does really well. So I know Harrison can pretty much be on with anyone.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Harrison is great, Ray is great. So I always try to get people and then see who I can kind of put together that works out. But yeah, so for me, it's more just that community, and I think that goes back to maybe in the fire department. And, that was also something very attractive of the fire service, is this camaraderie and kind of this family community type feeling. And maybe because I'm kind of veering a little bit away from that side of it, this real estate and building this social media, YouTube, whatnot, is kind of filling that space or void for me. Yeah.
Has it taken a long time to learn? Because since I we've talked before, and I first reached out to you, it's probably been 3 or so years now, maybe more. But I saw your channel. I think must have been on Dion's or something. I saw you pop up and just felt like I wanted to reach out to you. You were, of course, you took my call. We chatted for a little bit, and I think we've um, been friends since then. I think I was thinking this morning before we got on that this community is like there's something different about it because even though we mostly are connected through being online or Zooms or your lives, everybody's lives, but I feel like I don't know, even though we're so far away, you're closer friends to me than some people I know in my immediate area. And, you know, like you've seen people we've offered, and people have offered to us, if you're ever in the neighborhood, if you're ever in our state, you got a place to stay. Just let us know you're coming. And we've done the same thing. And I don't know, I wouldn't do that with
I want to
my,
make it clear I'm not offering anybody in the ORAT community to come stay with me. But
but
but I but I do know what you mean, and I think it's really that times are changing. I think Zoom, these calls or whatever platform you're on, I feel that is almost in person now. Like I said, I just was in North Carolina for about 3 weeks, a little over 3 weeks. Hunter from the school community, Sierra, Lauren, people I met on social media and the ORAC community. They met me in Asheville. We had a day hanging out, having lunch, whatnot. And then I went out to Charlotte the next day to go check out a basketball game. But while I was there, I drove to Winston-Salem after, and then that's where Val from the school community, Dividend Dave, one of the OGs of the ORAT, was there. I met up with him. Andy, who's in Ohio, but he was in South Carolina, so he drove back that way, stopped by Winston-Salem. So we all met. And it's weird where, like you said, this is the first time I met most of them in person, but didn't even feel like it was the first time I met them in person. Like I already knew them. I kind of knew their personality, their story. I mean, maybe some are taller, shorter than others or whatnot, but that's a separate joke from Val asking me to stand up when we're taking pictures. But I feel like I know these people already, even before you actually meet in person. And I think that's just, like you said, platforms, Zoom and whatnot. I think for me, that's almost meeting in person now. And I think, and that just, that's what real estate has become, or these communities, right? Finding people online. And there's still people that look at it being weird. A lot of my coworkers, they go, "What do you mean? You call them a friend, or you don't even know this person, and you talk to them online?" But I think that's just the times we're in right now.
yeah, that's been a really, really special, I think probably the best thing that's come about of this whole journey. And it's something really unexpected, right? Because like you said, I mean, we feel like we've been friends for years and we've met you once in person, a few of the other people on Zuber's first go round in Vegas. And like you said, I mean, there was no, I don't know, no weirdness about meeting for the first time, right? It's like, hey, I just saw you yesterday. How you doing?
Well, it was weird because I was like, I shouldn't make fun of Frank anymore because he stood up at the table and you're like a giant. So I was like, oh, okay, I gotta tone it down with Frank a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know how that came about. I know Dion started that thinking I was 4'3" or something like that, just because of how I sit in my chair. But um, yeah, that was really special. I think moving forward, where do you see? Um, I think we also had touched earlier on that you were considering maybe changing the name of your channel, or so if you change the name of your channel, I guess obviously the content might shift a little bit too, right? Because that would mean you're at a different point in your life and maybe you want to bring attention to different subjects.
Um, Yeah, I've always gone back and forth on it. Even like my logo, I do like it. I think it's a cool logo. But at the end of the day, I don't think anybody wants to see my caricature or picture on a hat or a shirt for them to wear, right? So it would be cool for me to wear it, I think, but for someone else to want my face on on their shirt or whatnot, I don't think so. That's if I ever wanted to get that big, I guess, or try to focus on that. But I think there's no right way to do it because I think even you may have talked about it before. Some people tell you to use your name in your brand. Some people say don't use your name in the brand, and I see a lot of people doing different things. So, I think it just comes down to what you're comfortable with. Part of me is I see it a lot in the fire service. A lot of guys they retire, but they're still the firefighter um, sticks with them. Everyone knows them as being in the fire service and whatnot, and sometimes they have a hard time stepping away from that identity. And I think that's why a lot of guys retire, or sometimes guys keep working because they don't want to lose that identity, right? So for me, that's part of it. I guess maybe I've lost a little bit of that drive in the fire service. So I don't have that same where it's my identity anymore. But at the same time, it's a conversation starter, I guess, where even like that fire has kind of changed a little bit. Fire, initially was that financial independence, retire early kind of acronym, but now I kind of even look at it more as like financially independent, recreational employment. So you kind of, it's always tinkering with it. But a lot of it is I'm lazy. I'm kind of like Dion too, so it's like it would be a lot of work to try to rebrand. So I doubt I'll ever do it. But that's for anyone that is thinking about getting started. You know, that's one thing. Just think about what your brand's going to be, what your vision is. But I think the bottom line is just get started. Just put it out. You can always change. But a lot of times I think just your content will speak for itself. There's people doing successful things with either their name or not their name in their branding, but just get started. And I think that's what Zuber's big on, and I think a lot of people are starting. So I think that's the fun part, seeing everyone get started.
Yeah, I'm grateful that Zuber puts that out there because I would have never imagined, being here with you today and having a channel. I going back real quick to your firefighter. That is a big part of our identities, right? I've been, I guess, noticing changes for me being a contractor all this time and starting to wind down a little bit. That that was a big part of our daily routines, right? Um, I think maybe you should consider getting when you talk about merch, it sounds kind of weird, but I think a lot of people in the group, for starters, would purchase it to be part of your journey, to be part of that history, even if your channel changed in the years down the road. Um, you will basically always be a firefighter, and I will always be old. So I'm going to hang on to that, and when I had t-shirts made right off the jump, and I thought, I don't know why I did it. It was just fun for me, right? I had a few made and they're fun. Some people have asked for them outside of um, the first round that I did, but they are expensive. I know you might have some connections if you decided to get some things made, printed or whatever it might be, but like for these, it was about $400 for 12 shirts. And I did, you know, I like real screen prints, the I forget what they call the iron-on things don't really work for me. So those are some considerations. But I would be excited to buy a firefighter shirt for sure.
Well, so that's, anyone is thinking, that's something else you got to think about too, because mine would probably cost more than what you paid because of the little details in the character and even the colors.
All the
So that's
colors, yeah.
something you don't think about too, right?
Mhm.
About how much colors are involved. Like you may think this image or drawing is cool, but then you're like, man, if I want to put it on merchandise, it has so much detail in it or
Yeah,
whatnot. I'm going to be spending this much more money. So those are all little things, and it's just same thing. We talked about real estate just getting started, making mistakes, and we're just trying to help people. So anyone that wants to get started or thinking about starting their channel, these are the kind of things that maybe you weren't thinking about when you were going to start, but now hearing us talking about it, those are little things that they hopefully pick up on and maybe look at it a little bit more before they actually do start and be like, okay, maybe I'm going to keep my logo or my design a little bit more simple. So if I do ever want to make merchandise, it's a lot easier to put on things that I'm not paying as much money or even whatever my channel name is or my brand name is. Am I comfortable having my name in there? Do I want my name in the merchant or the branding? So, like I said, just like real estate, we're trying to help people not make the same mistakes we made. But even from a social media or starting a brand or YouTube channel, whatever you want to call it, maybe our mistakes or our journey can also help them, not make the same mistakes we may have made.
yeah. We touched on it a little bit ago, but um, my 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 setups are still really basic, and I'm striving to go a little bit more in the direction that you're going with. We talked about thumbnails, for example. I've had the same thumbnail on all my videos, and it for me it was a challenge just to get that far. You see all these crazy things on YouTube, and just when you start to dive into how they actually do it, I guess younger people might have an easier time, learning all that new technology stuff, or it's second nature to them. But um, that's something I'd like to improve on, and I follow you uh, in that respect because you've done so much. You created a really great logo for yourself, and I think um, I've come a long way, but there's so much further to go. So I'm just looking forward to that part of it too.
Yeah, if anyone is looking to start, definitely use AI. AI is super helpful, coming up with like your titles, captions, descriptions, whatnot. And then as far as platforms, I mean, Zoom is probably, I think, the going to be the least amount of glitches in it. It seems to work the cleanest, but Restream I use for all my lives, and to me, Restream is the easiest to set up. It's a lot quicker. So Restream works really well, and you can stream on multiple platforms. But I think Zoom might be the easiest to just get started with and then focus on just getting that set up, get your camera set up, your microphone set up. But Restream is definitely the easiest to stream on multiple platforms at one time, and then it's easy to see the chat and whatnot. But if you're just going to do interviews like what we're doing right now, I think Zoom would be sufficient for most people. And don't get too I just wing it a lot of times.
Mhm.
Frank came up with questions, so that's why when he said he's preparing questions for this, I was like, "What are you talking about?" Even I got interviewed by Hunter a few days ago, and he sent me like 10 questions ahead of time, and I'm just like, man, these guys are taking it serious. Like I just come out there and say, hey, I'm gonna do your background story and just wing it, and we'll see where it goes. And but yeah, you just find what works for you, find what you're comfortable with, but have fun with it. I think that's the biggest thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Having fun and just getting started. It took a little while to be a little more comfortable, putting yourself out there, right? Because there
Oh,
are a lot of critics.
well,
But
maybe for you. For me, is just you just get out there. I'm used to it. Like I said, being in the fire service, that's part of it. You got to have thick skin. you know, that's what we do all day. And, you know, in the downtime, we're just making fun of each other. But that's the joke, right? If you're not being teased or someone's not making fun of you, they probably don't, you better be careful. So they probably don't like you or something is, you're doing something wrong to where they're not wanting to interact or make fun with you or have fun. So I think I sent out a reel to my group, you know, messages or whoever I communicate with that kind of, you know, my message is sarcasm, right? That's like my how I communicate. And if I'm not communicating with you that way, then you're not kind of in my inner circle, I guess, right? So, but yeah, just you know, get out there. Like I said, use your channel, my channel. I always tell people just come on, get comfortable, practice your skills, whatever you want to get better at, whatever, whether it's figuring out what camera you want to use, whether it's what microphone. But that's kind of what my channel's for, and I'm sure that's what your channel's for, is just getting people on and get comfortable, figure out what works and figure it out.
Yeah, and just all the different stories. That's what these interviews have been about, just introducing other people in the group to some of our friends and what they've gone through, how they're still at it, even with all the challenges they faced. And I guess we'll end. I know you're going to be doing a live in a little bit, so I'll let you go. But I was going to just go back to, if jokes and criticisms are the way you show love, then we know you must really love us. So thank you so much for everything.
Absolutely. And the one thing my dream though is I want to make one of the final edits of Frank's famous Wednesday Zoom calls. That I haven't made it yet. I don't know who does your editing, but I always get cut out. But anyone that wants to know more about the community or learn great information or has a question about real estate or what anything pretty much I think is just you know find connect with Frank and check out his Wednesday Zoom calls. But it's a great time. But like I said, my goal is to make one of the final cuts for that.
Obviously, you haven't watched all the repeats because you are in a few. You made it through somehow. I have to talk to my editor,
Well,
but
I'm muted then. I want to see. I don't want to be muted.
uh, all right. Well, look, hopefully we'll see you there this Wednesday. But thank you again for your time, and I appreciate all the invitations to come on with you. So anytime I'm available, I'm good with that.
All right, man. Thanks for having me, man. This was fun.
Okay, Mark.
Don't edit this one too much now.
I don't know if this one will make it on the air, but we'll see. Thank you.